"Sir, please take my baby sister. She's really hungry." A desperate voice on a crowded sidewalk stopped him cold. He was a wealthy businessman, hardened by loss and buried in deadlines. What began as a fleeting encounter with a starving boy begged you not to let them be taken away, and your life quickly unraveled into a journey that no one could have seen coming. Stay with us and listen to today's heart-touching story. Please also share where you're listening from. Graham Whitaker was always in a rush these days. Since Rowan's death, his late wife and the love of his life, work had become his only sanctuary. A multi-million-dollar deal hinged on the meeting he was sprinting toward. But just as he turned the corner, a thin voice cracked through the urban noise. "Uncle, please take my baby sister. She's really hungry." He froze. Standing by the curb was a dirt-smudged boy, no older than 7, clutching a baby in a threadbare blanket that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. His cheeks were streaked with dry tears, and his small hands trembled as he held the infant close to his chest. The baby let out a soft whimper, her tiny face barely visible beneath the blanket. The boy's eyes were wide with desperation, pleading not just with his words but with every part of his thin, shivering body. Graham's instinct was to ignore it. He had a meeting. But something in the boy's voice, or maybe those eyes, struck a nerve buried deep beneath his polished exterior. The boy's name was Micah Lowell, his baby sister, Tessa, and their mom, gone. 2 days and counting. No note, no explanation, just the vague promise that she'd be right back, words a 7-year-old boy clung to like a life raft. Micah had waited on the same street corner for hours, watching the world rush by, hoping that every approaching figure might be her. But each time, it wasn't. Graham, unsure of why he was even still standing there, knelt down slowly, his eyes meeting Micah's as if trying to see through the layers of fear and fatigue. "Where's your mom, kid?" "She said she'd be back, but she's not." Micah's arms trembled from holding his sister for so long. Graham offered to buy them food and maybe call someone, police, child services. But Micah flinched at the word police. "They'll take Tessa away. Please, don't let them." That was when Graham knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. They sat in a nearby cafe. Micah devoured a sandwich like he hadn't eaten in days. Graham fed Tessa with a new bottle he bought at the drugstore next door. Watching them, something softened in him. He called his assistant. "Cancel my meetings today and tomorrow." Later, the police arrived. Officers Harlan Gates and Naomi Brooks. Jaded eyes, routine questions, but Micah clung to Graham's hand, pleading not to go to an orphanage. His voice broke as he whispered, "Don't let them take us." "I won't," Graham said, surprising even himself. At the station, paperwork began. Graham's longtime friend, Laurel Penn, a social worker, showed up and helped cut through red tape. Graham agreed to temporary guardianship. Just for now, he told himself. Just until they find their mom. He took the children home. The ride in Graham's car was silent but heavy with emotion. Micah held Tessa tightly in the back seat, his eyes glued to the passing buildings. He didn't ask where they were going. He just kept whispering reassurances to his baby sister as she stirred in his lap. Micah stood frozen in Graham's sleek apartment, stunned by the high-rise view and plush carpet. Tessa whimpered. Graham felt utterly out of his depth. Over the next few days, Graham stumbled through bottles, bedtime routines, and baby giggles. Micah was cautious but helpful, always watching Graham with wary eyes as if waiting for the moment he might disappear too. He offered what he could, his quiet presence, his attentiveness to Tessa, and an occasional half-smile that felt like a rare treasure. He knew how to calm his sister with surprising grace, humming soft lullabies and cradling her tiny head with experienced hands. It was clear he'd been doing it for some time, alone. One evening when Graham fumbled to soothe Tessa, Micah stepped in, humming gently. The baby fell asleep in seconds. "You're good with her," Graham said. Micah shrugged. "Had to be." Then the call came. Laurel's voice was gentle but firm. "We found their mother. She's alive, but she's in rehab, drug abuse, unstable." Graham's heart dropped. "So what happens now?" "If she recovers and proves she can parent, they'll return to her. If not, the state takes custody unless a relative, or you, steps in." His breath caught. Adoption? Permanent guardianship? Could he really do this? That night, Graham found Micah drawing quietly in the corner of the living room. "What's going to happen to us?" the boy asked, without looking up. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of every unanswered question he'd held inside. "I don't know," Graham admitted honestly, pulling a chair closer and sitting down beside him. but I promise you, I'll do everything I can to make sure you and Tessa are safe and cared for." Micah's voice trembled. "Will we be left again?" Graham wrapped his arms around him, not hesitating for a second. "No, son, not if I can help it. I won't let that happen to you again." He held Micah a little tighter, grounding them both in that fragile moment. And he meant it with every fiber of his being. There was no going back now, not in his heart, not in his mind. These children weren't just guests in his home, they were becoming part of his soul. The next morning, Graham called Laurel. "I want to become their legal guardian, all the way." Laurel was stunned, then thrilled. "I'll help you every step." The process was grueling. There were background checks, detailed interviews, multiple home visits, and character evaluations that often felt invasive and deeply personal. Every step demanded more paperwork, more waiting, and more emotional labor than Graham had anticipated. But he persisted through the red tape and endless questions. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was becoming something entirely new. He was a man with a mission, and his mission had names: Micah and Tessa. Once the initial hurdles were cleared, Graham decided a fresh start was in order. He moved the kids to a house in the countryside, far from the noise and cement of the city. The new home had a large backyard with room to run, trees to climb, and a porch where Tessa could nap in the shade. There were quiet mornings filled with birdsong and long afternoons spent exploring trails and collecting wildflowers. It wasn't just safe, it was peaceful. Micah bloomed like spring after a long winter. He laughed more freely, asked more questions, and smiled with his whole face. He began drawing again, reading aloud, and even built a tree fort with Graham's help. He was no longer just surviving, he was living. And one night, just as Graham was tucking him in, brushing back the boy's hair and pulling the blanket to his chin, Micah looked up and said it. "Good night, Dad." Tears welled up in Graham's eyes. "Good night, son." The adoption was finalized in spring. The paperwork, the evaluations, the sleepless nights filled with worry and doubt. It all led to this one moment when a judge's signature changed everything. Graham Whitaker was now the legal father of Micah and Tessa Lowell. It was official on paper, but in his heart, the bond had already been formed long before. His once silent home rang with laughter that echoed through every hallway. Tessa babbled her first word, "Da," a sound that melted him more than any business win ever had. Micah started to come out of his shell, making friends at school, joining soccer practices, and even bringing home finger-painted masterpieces for the refrigerator. Graham learned to braid hair and pack lunchboxes, but more than that, he learned to listen, to laugh again, and to live for something greater than deadlines and conference calls. He didn't expect this life. He never planned for fatherhood, especially not in the wake of loss. But now, he couldn't imagine living without it. It was messy, it was hard, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever known. Please let us know your thoughts on this story. Would you have done what Graham did? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories. Thank you for listening to Storyline Narratives.